Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
Leroy.
I was gonna say, you said 5 seconds of silence, and here I want to go, Leroy Jenkins.
Okay, and welcome to the show. We got Steve Sullivan, no relation.
No, if you go back far enough in time, maybe we are.
Somewhere,
Maybe we are. We have to be
out there.
somewhere, right? I mean, we're both Sullivans.
Cousins, distant.
We're very distant cousins.
Anyway.
My people are from Boston. Your people are from Dallas, or thereabouts, right? So
Irish.
we're
No.
originally Irish, yeah.
There we go.
Irish Americans, at least. About half in my case. So
Half and half.
Same
Anyway,
here.
check out his book that he's gonna write soon, and then we got Jon Mark.
What's up, everybody?
yeah, I'm actually working on a serialized novel for Kindle Fella right now, with new episodes every weekend. Usually Friday this week, Saturday because of the holiday. Called Monster Shark on a Nude Beach.
Yep.
So, if that title sounds good to you, you'll probably like the book.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
And lots of other stuff, of course, too. Anyway,
I'm gonna let John start us off on our personal favorite movie soundtracks. Just gonna be very casual, just kind of dip around, see just which ones just come to our minds. Like, yeah, I just want to work out to that song, or it's just so epic, or I want to, hell, maybe I even want to sing along to it. It can be a bunch of just different artists that contributed to song, various songs that actually complemented the movie, as opposed to just being cheap cash-ins to sell an album, or it can be actual just like scores from the film composed by a music group or music composer.
yeah, I'm probably going with
Yeah.
mostly scores. So, how are you going to start us off, man?
Johnny
Well, for
Five,
me-
what do you got?
Well, for me, I'm gonna go first with a score, of course, as I figured I would at this point, and it's one that I've always felt was one of the more underrated action scores of the '90s, which not a lot of people talk about, from Hans Zimmer, and that's his whole score from Broken Arrow.
Woo!
Interesting.
He uses a lot of rock music and even other kinds of different percussion throughout it, which is very unusual for his style. He kind
Oh
of
yeah,
started.
and it's very like Western inspired, you could tell, particularly in the main theme.
Yeah, it's like, and it's so wild because you look several times at it as like, is Mark Mancina or Trevor Rabin from Yes on there somewhere? I swear it sounds like the scores from those same other blockbusters that were out around that same time.
I know it feels that way. And what's funny is that that theme, as I mentioned, would later be used in Scream 2 a year later for some
Yes.
reason.
Yeah,
Which that's how I knew about the score before I watched Broken
Right.
Arrow. Which is
kind of like
hilarious.
how Universal used the Dragonheart and Jurassic Park scores in other movies, and so yeah, it's like
Oh yeah.
and sometimes the scores would pop up in just foreign film trailers, like for the UK, which was even odder. It's like, okay, I'm not sure why that is, but okay.
Yeah, Yeah, trailers use a lot of film music that came from other places, and there's even Hong Kong kung fu movies that have used like Creature from the Black Lagoon as part of their soundtrack. It's like,
Right.
did they actually license that? Why did they do that? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but
Right.
and Universal used some of their classic monster scores to rescore films they brought to this country, like Godzilla vs. King Kong, the original one. So you can never tell. And trailers, it's nice when they get the music for a trailer from a film that's kind of similar to the film they're doing, though. Yeah, I can't think of any examples. I know I've heard kind of Indiana Jones music in other trailers for other things that are they're at least they're adventure films, but then sometimes you'll get one that's just wildly strange and inaccurate too. So Broken Arrow, huh? Hans Zimmer, did you say?
Yep, Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. There's some of his stuff that I really like, and then it seems like in the last, I don't know, 5, maybe 10 years, a lot of his stuff is much more kind of tonal rather than motif or theme based. So it'll be like,
yeah, that's my big problem with him nowadays.
Yeah,
We don't know
the same.
how much stuff is left over from other scores, and he's just now using it. It's like,
I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna play a note on my keyboard. That's your score.
And it's been weird seeing him try electronic scores with Amazing Spider-Man 2, let alone with Tenet recently, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen Tenet yet because of damn pandemic and that kind of stuff. That reminds me, I need to check that out. One of the scores that springs to mind of his that it's kind of his, but it's also Klaus Bartlett, who I don't know hardly anything about, but it's the original Pirates of the Caribbean score.
Yes.
And it's like, I think Zimmer took a lot of credit for it, but his follow-up soundtracks don't have any of the kind of verve.
Yeah, it sounds.
They don't have any of that
static.
verve and excitement to it. I have written a lot of book chapters to the original Pirates of the Caribbean, and I think I've got at least 4 out of the 5 soundtracks, and none of the other ones are nearly as good as that first one, which kind of harkens back to the old 1940s swashbucklers. It's got 2 or 3 really strong themes and then some underlying themes, but the really exciting kind of dueling theme from it gets my blood pumping every time I hear it. So
Same here.
Totally.
I still think that's one of the last truly great scores we've heard past few years, to be honest.
Well, the other problem is, I don't
think I disagree with you. It's certainly my favorite for the past 15 years, probably.
Well, and it seems like everything has to be a copy of a copy. It's just like, okay, so we're seeing scores that sound like another hit movie that came out 5 years prior, so you can see why many people kind of got cynical with giant blockbusters after a while.
Yes.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Yes, although now, since we're talking about Zimmer and what he's done lately, didn't he work on the first Wonder Woman, maybe even the second Wonder Woman?
Second one, he did.
Spore?
Oh, okay. Yeah, and Henry Jackman, I know, has been composing a lot of the superhero movies, and he was like a backup orchestra composer for some of his productions, I think. So.
And I think Zimmer may have been responsible for that kind of crazy Wonder Woman theme that's kind of, it sounds like a bagpipe.
Oh, almost. that was Junkie XL.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah. He started off composing on Mad Max Fury Road and video games like The Matrix Path and Neo and
Deadpool he worked on as well.
Yep. Yeah, Run All Night. And so he from that point on he would do the party music you hear in the background, and then he'd start doing all the heavy orchestra, and it's like, wow, okay, talk about a totally different.
Yeah, because I do love that wacky Wonder Woman theme. It's played on a cello. I've actually seen.
Yeah.
That bit. I've seen it played, and it's like, that's a cello? Holy crap!
Yeah.
And whoever wrote it, I really like that, and I know Zimmer was involved in the Batman versus Superman, or was it the other way around? I can never remember the title. That came
Or-
out of that.
Or is it the parody
originally.
Superman on top of Batman? I don't know.
Right. I don't hate the film the way some people do. I actually enjoy the longer cut better than the shorter one.
I still need to see the longer cut, but I
Same
can
here.
definitely,
I haven't seen it yet.
I can definitely recommend Justice League, the new cut.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That too. That's actually a much better film. I didn't hate the first one. It's just it's just okay.
Right, it was a Sunday night movie. It wasn't a Friday movie.
And
I didn't hate it as much as other people.
we're talking
Yeah.
about since we're talking about more recent movies. I was planning to kind of backflash into the 40s and stuff.
Hey, that's fine.
But
sure
I
we
actually
could
really
talk-
liked Bear McCreary's. I just watched this again the other night. I think it's Bear McCreary who did the soundtrack to Godzilla King of the Monsters. Which has
Really.
a lot of it's got a lot of grace notes from the Subaraya, the original Godzilla soundtracks and stuff, and it's quite good. I don't have it on CD, so I haven't actually been writing to it yet. But when I heard it the other night, I was like, yeah, he did it. It's kind of really good modern riffs using a lot of the old Godzilla soundtracks.
He definitely did his homework, and years just seeing him make all. He definitely, we've talked in the past about the guy who composed the first two Terminator movies and Johnny Mnemonic.
Oh yeah, Brad Fiedel.
Brad Fiedel, and I definitely think he took inspiration from his kind of cyberpunk and especially Vangelis on Blade Runner, and so seeing him compose all that epic, women shouting in the background and just utter deep percussion that he did on Battlestar and the Terminator show is like, and even Human Target, he got a lot of jungle riff kind of music going in that show, and so it's like, yeah, I can totally see him. I don't remember the score, but I definitely do recall there being some songs. It's like, yeah, that sounds like, yeah, totally, 70s Godzilla.
Yeah, it was Akira Ufukube who wrote all those Godzilla scores originally. Well, not all of them. He wrote like the really good ones from the 50s and early 60s. And
Oh, perfect.
later on too, and they're iconic, and you can't go wrong quoting a really good original soundtrack.
No,
No.
You can if you kind of try to outdo it. Then
like Harry Gregson Williams and Nick Lenny Smith were kind of the go-to guys for a while in every other Jerry Bruckheimer, Tony Scott movie. But then it seemed like other than Spy Game, they just kind of were just going to town on the electronic keyboard. It wasn't as interesting as seeing the visual accompanying it, I found. Don't get me wrong, you still should check them out, but yeah, they use
I know what you mean though.
they use some interesting down, and just rock kind of riffs. I'm like, wow, is this a fancy cop show? What am I?
I mean,
Right,
look for ones like The Rock,
Yeah,
I believe he worked on that.
Yeah, The Rock and Enemy of the State scores are really good. I definitely can recommend Brian Tyler. Have you guys been following him?
I haven't.
Oh, is that the one who did Rambo and Expendables?
That he did Fast and Furious 4, but he also has done plenty of other movies. Like he did the Jason Statham Jet Li movie War, and Sword Fight was one of his most downloaded scores. His score for Alien vs. Predator 2 got reused in the Denzel movie Unstoppable.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
But he also scored Star Trek Enterprise and currently is scoring Yellowstone, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So, but John might know him especially for doing Final Destination 5 as well as Iron Man 3 and Avengers 2.
Iron Man 3.
Okay, cool.
Law Abiding Citizen and Thor Ragnarok, Triple X3, as well as the new version of the Hawaii Five-0 theme. So
Another recent guy I like is Ramin Djawadi, who did the Game of Thrones, famously the Game of Thrones theme.
Mm-hmm. Are you a fan of his Person of Interest and Prison Break music?
Person of Interest, we loved that show. That was a really, really good show.
Yeah.
This guy into that, still watching it as of right now.
Oh yeah, totally. He also did the recent Space Jam as well as the first Iron Man, and
I'd forgotten that.
I think Pacific Rim and
I wanted to call him out.
Westworld.
I'm pretty sure, is he the one? No, it's the other guy that I like. That's kind of a modern guy. Is Michael Giaccino? I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right.
Yes.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
I love his stuff, and the Mission Impossible one he did, which I forget the name of, is the one that Brad.
So intense.
What?
So intense.
Oh, intense.
But it was also a brilliant. It's a really good score on its own, but it also has really smart quotes from the original Mission Impossible theme. There's a point where they're going through a place in India, and he's like recast the Mission Impossible theme with like sitars and Indian instruments, but unless you're really listening to it, when my wife and I saw it in the theater, I was like, hey, that's the Mission Impossible theme, kind of twisted around and distorted and stuff. And she's like, oh my God, I didn't even notice that. Because he's really kind of doing interesting stuff with the original soundtracks that he was working with. And as I said earlier, I totally love it when someone takes an original theme from like a television show that is iconic and people know, and then plays off of it and adds that into a really good score.
Absolutely.
And he even did one movie that I'm not even a huge fan of, but I've always loved the score to it, which is Jupiter Ascending. Particularly during the chase scene.
Oh yeah, totally. He's he's been a good voice of a lot of the independent kind of movies, as well as when he's not doing Star Trek or the Pixar's. I mean, he did one hell of a job with Rogue One. I was like, I thought that was John Williams, and like, because John Williams came back for the new movies, but one of the few complaints about that movie was that the score didn't feel as like John gave it as all, and it's like that one is like, that felt like a perfect tribute. It's like I could have sworn it was John Williams. But yeah, he did the Mission Impossibles. He did 50-50, which was kind of a more somber kind of theme, just kind of more subdued. And it's like, wow, that was way subtle, and that's what that movie needed. That's dealing with a guy getting over cancer.
Right. And I'm looking at his, at all the stuff he's done, and it's just like half of the stuff I didn't even remember he'd done, but I love it. And as you said, Rogue One, I love Rogue One. Rogue One is one of my favorite recent Star Wars movies, if not my favorite. And my wife's too. It's just, this one, that one really hit it on all cylinders for us.
Totally. He got on my radar just playing all the various Call of Duty games on PC, as well as The Incredibles. And so it just kind of became that he kind of had he was able to kind of, I guess you could say he was the best at doing kind of his homages and just giving them heart, as opposed to just feeling like I'm just going to do my own kind of riffs on other, orchestra scores, but not really, become my own voice. And I think he has become his own voice, because he just somehow is, aside from whatever gig he's gotten, how invested he is, he's really good at just kind of really tackling some kind of emotion in it.
No, he really puts a lot of emotion in his work, and there's a scene at the end of Ghost Protocol. It's like I don't want to give it away for people that haven't seen it, but it's like the coda to the film, with the cast meeting, and there's kind of this bittersweet ending at the end of it. And there's that point in the movie where his music comes in and it kind of swells, and there's this feeling of loss and separation and stuff. It chokes me up even when I listen to it sometimes. It's so emotional and so well done. And I'm looking at his list now, and right after that he did John Carter, which I love as a film. It's totally underrated.
I do too.
And his score for it is just amazing. And holy cow, that's almost 10 years ago now. Wow.
Right.
I know. I'm like, Jesus, they're gonna make me feel old now.
How dare we like everything?
I know. It's like, you can't like that. They said that was a flop. Well, I loved it. So you mentioned John Williams, though, and I probably there are two people I've probably written more stories and more books to than anybody else, and John Williams is one of them, and Bernard Herrmann is the other one. But let's tackle John first, because
what's your personal favorite of his?
I can't even pick. So Right
I
now,
think
I mean, I got
playing
mine, but
Jaws. I'm writing a shark book, so I've been playing his
nice.
Jaws 1 Special Edition, and Jaws 2 soundtracks kind of over and over again. They're gorgeous. How can you not love Star Wars, the original
hmm
trilogy? You know, if you're lucky enough to have the box set of that.
Well, hell, I actually bought an album that had like his complete collection, like all his themes from every movie he'd ever done. So yeah, I mean, my grandmother always loved the Superman score, but yeah,
Superman is
I
one of his
became
best scores. I think if you had to pick one that was kind of had all his stuff in one place, that's probably it.
oh totally.
And you just love it. And then you go back and you listen to his TV themes and stuff. You know, I mean, he did
The Olympics, you know.
right. Yeah, no,
Mhm.
he did the Olympics. We were watching the Olympics, and my wife was like, "Well, that's his theme from Los Angeles, and that one's his theme from Atlanta." She keeps
Right.
these kind of things in her head. God love her, and all I know is that I love him. But you know,
You even
he
got like
did.
Jurassic Park he did, which I love to death.
Jurassic Park theme I would quote a lot.
I was just playing that earlier today. I swapped it into my Jaws music to give myself a break.
Uh,
I think that's
and
one of his best scores too.
oh totally.
It's my favorite score of his, actually.
And the Born on the 4th of July has to be probably his most underrated. It's just the way that
Yeah.
saxophone just plays away is like God. That makes
That's
me want
really
to let out
good.
a man cry.
Heartbreaking too. So that's not what I listen to a lot when I'm
No,
writing.
that's fine. I guess it's somehow I don't know. I just kind of just really connected with me just because I don't know. It's just because there's plenty of other people who are very talented, but yet whatever score they compose, when you see it in the movie, you don't know if it's because the movie wasn't perfect or if it was just that the actors were overacting in that scene where the music was playing, and it just kind of, you know, he's been fortunate to not be in as many movies where it just reeks of melodrama. And he's done a lot of the
picked
epics.
good assignments. You know, I mean, it's helped that he hooked up with Spielberg early on. You know,
Yes.
and
Oh,
I like
yes.
Spielberg. He's not my favorite director ever, but generally, you know, he's going to give you something to work with as a composer.
But hell, I mean, I even forgot that he did the scores for Presumed Innocence, Stanley and Iris, Home Alone, Far and Away, which is a Ron Howard movie, as well as Nixon and Sleepers. So even John Singleton's Rosewood, and I don't even know if there's even scores released to those movies, but I should check them out. But,
Yeah, no, you're right. I should go back through his whole list. And he did the TV series he did were kind of amazing too. I mean, he did the Time Tunnel, he did the Land of the Giants, he
I
did
didn't know he did Time Tunnel. That's great.
yeah, he did. He did both versions of Lost in Space. The first one is kind of funky, but the second one is brilliant. And I don't know if you watched the Lost in Space reboot
Not
or
yet.
if
No,
you
I haven't
skip
seen
the
that.
beginning of it. But they've got their own little new theme, but if you watch the opening and don't let them say skip opening, if you don't skip the opening, you get a payoff about halfway through where suddenly it breaks into that second heroic John Williams Lost in Space theme on their
Right.
opening credits. And it's just when that happened, I was like, oh my God, there it is. And it just elevated the whole experience for me because it's, you know, he did some of the best TV themes as well
Really?
as some of the best movie themes. We could probably just
Hell, prior
talk
to
about
Even,
him for a
even for
whole hour.
even like Harry Potter, even
right,
that was
prior.
him.
That was kind of where my sister mainly knew him from, and I was like, oh, come on, guys. You know, Star Wars was one of the first epic movies we saw. Of course, But I mean, that was kind of even just the fun of just why I even wanted to play a lot of the Star Wars games. Is like after a while, you're gonna hear a total, just complete track. You know, it's like
Right.
that's right. And
Mhm.
now that is my favorite track. So when I would go back to the movies, you know, the first 6 movies, I would end up just being able to just put the pieces together. I'm like, oh yeah, I played this level where that complete track plays. It's like he would never hold back. It's like, yeah, and the movie cuts away technically 2 minutes into this, but we got 3 more minutes of the rest of that score.
And that's awesome. And his Harry Potter score is great too. And I'm looking up at I have a row of CDs above my computer that are some of my most played stuff, and I see his Williams score to Dracula. up
Right,
there.
79,
Yeah.
Oh,
Towering
yeah.
Inferno, and Black Sunday, as well as, I mean, if you ever see Hitchcock's Family Plot, it's a very wacky kidnapping movie. And
Did he do that too? Jesus.
yeah,
I
and
didn't know he did that.
he kind of
Yeah.
does some small, like, little piano, just enough to kind of invent the intrigue, but complement the comedy. Dun-dun-dun-dun. And it's like, that's, I always thought that was interesting. Now
You're
that I
gonna
know
know
that.
how old I am now because I saw Family Plot when it originally came out.
Oh,
I saw
perfect.
Jaws when it originally came out. I watched Lost in Space when it originally came out. So
I'm surprised he didn't do the original Fugitive score. That would have been a hell of a score.
yeah, that's kind of surprising. That's a really good score too, but I don't
That
know.
would have been fascinating, actually.
And the Mission Impossible score was done
Yeah, he
by
was
I just
made
had it
to
in my
yeah.
head and then I
imitate
forgot it.
Layla
Laszlo
Schifrin.
Schifrin,
Yeah.
who did I think he did the score to Mannix too, the old TV detective
Mhm.
show Mannix. Have you guys ever seen that? It's an amazing show. It's got a
I've
great
not seen
theme
that.
song.
Hmm.
I always mixed it up with Perry Mason, and I'm like,
Oh,
no,
they're
Perry
completely
Mason had a
different.
car explosion. Mannix had a car explosion at the start.
Mannix was the one where it got basically it got kicked off at TV eventually for being too violent.
Right. And every
Wow.
person
People
he's
shot,
representing
blown up,
clearly.
punched out.
Oh, and all the women came up to him, just like Captain Kirk on Star Trek. It's like, Jesus, okay.
Hey, it was the late 60s and 70s, man. That's what life is like.
Right. But Laylo makes sense. I did notice that score sounded familiar, but I think he scored some Bruce Lee movies also, if I'm not mistaken. Or
Maybe the American versions. I don't know.
he definitely did Rush Hour, which I thought was perfect. I was like, okay, that's a fun callback to his
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's fun.
espionage and adventure themes. Let me look him up.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Jackie Chan. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Although a lot of his films are rescored in America with kind of weird assemblages of stock music. They're fun. And the score's
Yeah.
usually pretty good, but you look, hey, who did the score? And it's like, there's no credit for it because they were cutting
Right.
them together from stock music libraries. But they
It
did a
took
good
people
job of it.
years to even just say, what do we do with this? We do a compilation. Okay, so, God, yeah, it is kind of a blur. He kind of just does a lot of more obscure stuff all throughout, but I didn't realize he did Return from the River Kwai, as well as the Deadpool, the Dirty Harry movie, as well as FX2. So, okay.
Schifrin did those?
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah, he was a really good composer too. I don't have a lot of his stuff other than the Mission Impossible theme, obviously, through Michael Giaccino. But however you say his name, it's Giaccino until someone tells me otherwise.
Giaccino.
I think that's how you say it. That's the only way I've heard it, so.
Giaccino
It's
in a
a-
Tarantino film. No, I'm just
So the other guy that's my main guy is Bernard Herrmann. And
kidding.
Bernard,
Hmm.
largely considered perhaps the greatest film composer of all time. I mean, I think his first film was Citizen Kane, right? And his last film was Taxi Driver. So
Mhm.
you can't hardly bookend your career better than that, I don't think. But what I
Yep.
love him for is I love him for his adventure and fantasy films that he did. He did Journey to the Center of the Earth with James Mason. He did famously a bunch of Harryhausen films. He did Seventh Voyage of
Once
Sinbad
again, jeez.
and
Nice.
Jason and the Argonauts, and just an astonishing array of really interesting films. He
The
did a whole bunch.
Virginian, nice.
He did Psycho with Hitchcock. He did a whole bunch
Still
of
scares
Hitchcock
me.
films.
Yep.
He did North by Northwest, which is maybe my favorite Hitchcock film and maybe my favorite Hitchcock soundtrack too. This guy, and he like John Williams, he was one of these composers that wrote symphonies when he was not writing film music. So you can't go wrong with Bernard Herrmann. Day the Earth Stood Still, he did famously with the the weird theremin soundtrack and that kind of stuff. He was always experimenting.
Oh, look here, we got 2 episodes of Lost in Space. Okay.
He did. He had music he had done, stock music
Twilight
he'd done
Zone.
for the Twilight Zone. that got reused endlessly. And you can, if you know Herrmann's music, you can tell that there's that kind of harp music that they play, kind of eerie, coming in and out of the episodes a lot. That's clearly his work.
You definitely hear some of it in Cape Fear.
Right.
Oh, definitely.
Yep. Yeah, that's another one. He just you can't go wrong with him. His work is just bloody brilliant, as they'd say.
Very well said. So let's talk about Mark Mancina and Trevor Rabin.
Of course.
All right, I'm drawing a blank, so you guys are gonna have to.
They collaborated with on this one Yes Reunion album in the 90s, but yeah, Mark Mancina, you know his scores from Speed, Bad Boys, Con Air with Trevor Rabin, and as well as Shooter and Training Day, which I'm still pissed that he hasn't released the score to Training Day. I'm like, that's a great score.
Wow, is that not out in Europe or something like that? Sometimes
Right? Yeah, I would have
stuff
thought.
from overseas.
I guess it just there's only like 3 scenes, I guess, that really use it. So I don't know.
There you go. That could be it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and much like all these awesome composers, he's been scoring some video games, and then he's mainly for the last 10, 20 years been scoring Criminal Minds. He's like one of 4 credited composers on that. So
I didn't even know that. Interesting.
Each episode there's like 4 composers edited, which is another rarity. I'm like, usually it's 1 or 2 people. I'm like, 4, okay.
It kind of amazes me when these guys can do television shows and do them really well and for a long time, because I would think that way would lie serious musical burnout.
Yeah, I think in the 2000s, at that point when movies or shows had to be just as intense as the movies, like Bruckheimer was intense, whether he was on the big or small screen, every production he produced. So it's like, I think around that point is like, composers is like, if it was in the budget, is like they're gonna give it your all. They're looking at the dailies and they're gonna do their damn best to just make sure that score, isn't too loud, playing over the audio, and it just really complements the intense close-ups and other shocking reveals. And I'm sure it has to be a chore because they have to know how high to play the note, how many frames the note should last.
Right, yeah. Well, I assume that they sit
it's all
there
digital,
with the stuff in front of them as they score it, and then you have the grace of having really good synthesizers nowadays, so we don't all sound like 80s adventure movies.
Casio keyboards, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's even in good movies in the 80s, the soundtracks are sometimes just so terrible. They're just, it's the synthesizer stuff is just awful, and it's or it's whiny fake strings or something like that. So if you run into something that's really good from the 80s, like the stuff that John Carpenter was doing for his own films, like I love his soundtrack for Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China. It's
definitely.
It's definitely, it's got rock, rock influences and some synth, and it's hard driving usually, and it's not just namby-pamby strings playing behind. The music swells as they fall in love. Well, screw that. I want to have hard driving rock and roll while Jack Burton's driving his rig down the highway through sheets of rain like hot lead,
Right. It would really make a difference now. But now, have you heard of W.G. Snuffy Walden?
I don't think I have. Enlighten me.
You probably know his scores from more comedic or laid-back drama like I'll Fly Away, The Wonder Years, and the original Stephen King's The Stand. But I especially fell in love with him just listening to his score for Early Edition and The West Wing. And
oh, cool.
His other credits include Once and Again, George Lopez, Felicity, and Boomtown and The Drew Carey Show. But he did it. I had his expensive soundtrack for West Wing, and he talks like, I had to teach myself classical music composing just for the score alone. Otherwise, I didn't have the gig. Then, as soon as we got picked up, I switched back to what I was already doing, which was digital. This is in '99, so I was like, yeah, you had to hustle.
Yeah, that's
Like,
like
I'm
a
not
that's like
doing that
actors,
shit
and you ask an actor if they can ride a horse, they always say yes, and then if they get the job, they go and learn to ride a horse, right?
again. Oh man, the life of a career.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting when actors and composers and stuff have that kind of a crossover kind of thing. It's like, yeah, and I guess as a writer, you do this too. You're like, yeah, I can do that. It doesn't matter what they're asking. It's like, yeah,
Close enough.
I can do that. I can write realistic Spanish dialogue, no problem.
All right. I'll fold them. I can't fold them. He's currently composing Still Team, and I would like it if he could definitely get a chance at scoring a video game or an epic movie. So.
I'm gonna get back into the deep past again, and I'm gonna go with Max Steiner, who famously did King Kong. He was Warner Brothers house composer, so he basically invented the modern.
Treasure the Sierra Madre. Oh baby, okay.
Yeah, just look at Steiner's stuff. You've got King Kong and Casablanca on it. What more do you need?
Nothing else.
If you score those two films, you're a genius. You're a god. You don't have to work again. But he did years of really, really good scores.
The FBI story is a really good one. I remember from what I'm seeing listed here with Jimmy Stewart. I recall that having a lot of good trumpet. So.
Yeah, he was a brilliant composer, and as I said, his score for King Kong basically invented how we score pictures now. It has all the motifs for the characters and
giant scope that not any kind of frame can just communicate to you. You have to insert that in order to tell the audience, here's what we're going for. Here's why you should be wowed and amazed.
And you had kind of end-to-end score too. It wasn't just a little bit of sound here and there. It was like a complete orchestral score for the whole film, which people hadn't really done that before in the era of talkies. Though sometimes you would get a silent film like Metropolis, where they would create a complete score. And the score to Metropolis, I don't remember who did it, but the original score to Metropolis is amazing.
Yeah.
But when we got to talking pictures, they didn't do that until Steiner came along. He created this, and he did it in King Kong in The Most Dangerous Game, were shot about the same time. So it was like he was kind of figuring it out in Most Dangerous Game, and then brought it full bore in King Kong. Nice. And you can hear some echoes of that in the Peter Jackson King Kong score when they're in.
Oh, I'm sure they have to.
When they're in New York and they're doing the King Kong stage play at the end of Peter Jackson's film that goes horribly wrong, they're using music from the original King Kong, which is really cool.
That's a funny Easter egg. What's your take on his scores to White Heat, The Searchers, and The Violent Men, let alone the Kane Mutiny?
The Searchers is an amazing film, end to end. I think it's John Wayne's best film, and I love the Kane Mutiny too. There's a Bogart's performance in that is just amazing. White Heat.
James Cagney.
Top of the world, ma.
Yeah, top of the world.
That film just astonished me the first time I saw it, because it was just. You hear about these old gangster films that Warner Brothers and the others are doing, Warner especially, and you think, yeah, but it's of its time. It's really not going to hold up really well. But a lot of them really, really do. Because the emotional stuff that's hidden within them still resonates today, even if they're driving different cars and they've got somewhat different concerns, and none of them have televisions and they don't have iPhones or any of that kind of crap. But still. And the scores are one of the things that hold all those together.
You need them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure do.
Another of my old-time favorite guys is Miklos Rosa, and he's done just a pile of stuff. But the things that I have sitting on my shelf above my head here are the score to Ben Hur, which is an amazing film. The original Ben Hur. I know there was one a couple of years ago, and I'm like, Why?
Yeah, I didn't even bother.
I never bothered with that.
I
so.
mean, but
You know, the
score
first one
for
won 12 Academy Awards, the most of all time, right?
well, and I forget who did it. The one singer, her vocals were later in like other movies like Man on Fire, but I remember her score along with Zimmer was just a total I mean, the movie's already a love letter to movies like Ben Hur, but it's like the score is like, yeah, they totally had that on repeat while studying their notes.
Right, but Zimmer, Rosa did things like Ben Hur and King of Kings, so he did kind of these religious epics, but he also did some Hitchcock stuff that I'm not remembering the name of, and he did the Harryhausen's Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which
Ooh.
might be my favorite fantasy film score of all time. It is just end to end brilliant. The only sad thing about it is that he did it during some kind of a music strike, or they didn't have enough money or something, so he didn't get a full orchestra. He got like a small orchestra. So some of the stuff isn't quite as, I don't know, bombastic's not the right word, but you know how a full orchestra sounds as opposed to when you've got kind of a half orchestra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
not
still
coming full
brilliant.
circle.
Part of me would like to hear them redo it just note for note, but with a full orchestra rather than with a smaller orchestra, because it's a brilliant.
You can tell how many people are in the room.
It's a
Yeah, you can tell.
And I had to get I've actually got 2 copies of that. One I had to get from Europe, and the other one I got, I don't know, from a bootleg guy somewhere or something.
Perfect.
It's actually, I have the 2 disc version that I got from, I don't remember where, and I've got the 1 disc version from Europe. But either way, the score is great. It's amazing. It's interesting that sometimes these scores that are hard to find and are expensive on CD or vinyl even, you can get them for like $6 on iTunes or Amazon Digital.
There
So
you go.
I actually picked up Jaws. Speaking of John Williams again, I got Jaws 2. I was like, there's a John did the soundtrack to Jaws 2. Why don't I have that? Why didn't I get that? Here I am writing a shark book. And I looked and it was like, the CD for Jaws 2 costs you $120. Or it's $6 on iTunes for digital. I'm like, what am I, a dope? I may love having, a physical thing to hold in my hands, but I'm not going to pay 20 times as much to have a CD sitting on my shelf so I can admire the
Exactly.
tiny jewel case. It's not like you've even got a lot of album art on a jewel case. You can't frame it and hang it on the wall. It's too small. So it's interesting what
it doesn't deserve it. It needs to be full center and frame.
So I guess that's my quick tip is to never pay scalper prices without first checking iTunes, Amazon.
I've used a few others. I forget the name of it, but there was this one cool one where it was cheaper than both eBay and Amazon combined, where it was pretty good at it would show you what used prices were going on, and I mean, I had plenty of them that were just shipped in from Germany and Spain, and I was just like, yeah, whatever I got to do for this rare soundtrack, and because like some of them were even pricier just because like the vinyl was more accessible than the CD version. I'm like, I'm in the car, I'm driving around, I need a CD version.
Yep. Yep. Although we haven't actually set it up. We've had it for a while. We have a record player that'll actually transfer things onto MP3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my wife and I need to get that set up and transfer some of our vinyl that's harder to find. Although it's surprising how much stuff is out there digitally, and if it's not out officially, some knucklehead like one of us has put it onto YouTube with a picture of the album jacket. It's like, here's 4 hours from The Shadow with an album jacket art. Just to keep your eyes busy while you listen to it.
Oh, totally.
The Shadow's another great soundtrack. Speaking of which,
That is.
I know a lot of people didn't like is that Goldsmith who did that? It is.
Goldsmith, yep.
Jerry Goldsmith, yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith, yep. will
Should know
always
he's
be
one of my favorite
remembered.
composers.
I mean, and his son Joel did one hell of a job, just kind of just staying on his own turf while just kind of proving, when he was, on his deathbed that he could still stand in for his father. But I mean, yeah. Aside from franchises like, again, Planet of the Apes and Star Trek, he's definitely, I think, the first one that really comes to mind for me, because I just know that L.A. Confidential was such a big one. John might remember his score from Criminal Law, but I mean,
Yeah.
I just remember just so many other kinds of movies. He really did navigate pretty well to where it's like, I was never surprised when I saw him pop up. It's like, okay, he did that one Jack Ryan movie. He did that one 13th Warrior. He did the original Mummy, from 99.
Yep.
He did
Air Force One. He did.
Air Force One, yeah. He replaced Randy Newman of all people. And
Deep Rising, of course, as I always mention every time.
I have actually not heard the score for Deep Rising and Congo or Executive Decision outside of the movie, so I would definitely like to check those out. But
Wow, that was weird.
right,
Sorry about
Is that
that.
somebody's phone?
getting
That was
musical
mine.
here.
Mm.
What do you
I
think
thought
of
we
his?
were getting a clip for a minute there. Or something.
What's you guys' take on his score for the Gremlins films and Total Recall?
I've always loved his Gremlin scores. They've always been ones I continue to listen to, even all these years. And
I like the score to Total Recall, although it always reminds me. I think he owes money to Basil Polidorus,
I
Who
think
did-
so.
who did the
Wow.
amazing score to the original Conan movie.
I know.
Which I think
I
is
thought it
Conan.
was him for the longest time, so yeah, it's like
Yeah, because that is a great score. That is one of the scores that I write to the most too. Especially when I'm writing fantasy film, I'll load myself up with Bernard Herrmann and I'll slap that one into the mix too. And,
Yeah. he also
got
did
that.
the Omen franchise as well as the first 3 Rambos, but
Yeah.
people might also know him for doing other stuff like Chinatown and Charles Bronson movies. He really did kind of just show up in every kind of genre, and I think that's why he did so well.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're kind of starting to develop. We've talked about Ramin Djawadi and Michael Giaccino and a number of these other kind of younger composers that we're transitioning. We're transitioning now from people like John Williams. God love him, he's still alive, and I have enjoyed even his last 3 Star Wars soundtracks. Have lots to enjoy in them. But we're transitioning away from kind of the older guard into the newer guard now, and a lot of them are doing actual orchestral scores. I don't mind electronica, and I don't mind tone music and that kind of stuff.
It's just got to feel like it belongs, not like a producer got into the studio last minute and decided, well, I like this, my kid likes this will sell.
Right, or you've hired
Yeah.
the Hans Zimmer studio and Hans is out that day, so 4 of his assistants are sitting around
Let's take
pressing keys
something
on the synthesizer.
Or better yet, let's take a score that he deleted for a good reason because he wasn't proud of it.
So I think, I don't know if we're close to wrapping up. I think we might be, but
I think it's. We can mention
Well, I still got
one more.
about 3 of them I can mention real quick.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, go.
Let's do that. Just lead the way.
Well, I got James Horner was one I was gonna mention.
Oh yeah.
Who, of course, did Aliens,
Yes.
Commando, 48 Hours, and for my favorite fantasy film he did, which was Willow. which I've
Yes,
always gone
great
back and
fantasy
looked at
score.
score.
And you definitely saw a lot of it in all the other swordplay that he scored, like Mask of Zorro. But I mean,
Definitely.
even the Judge and Gorky Park and Blade Runner, I think, are all very emotional.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, he did a lot of good work. Didn't he step in for Howard Shore on the King Kong soundtrack, or am I misremembering that?
I'm not sure, but I was
Did he?
thinking of mentioning a few others like Howard Shore, but yeah, it's like a lot of the horror scores for even like Philip Glass's Candyman, I think, everyone should just sit down and listen to. It'll just blow you away.
Oh,
And
definitely.
We've gotten way too far into this without mentioning Ennio Morricone for his Western films, but also for things like The Thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Morricone, man. There's a reason Tarantino just, couldn't take his hands off him. I gotta use you a few more times.
We also got one that I find to be very underrated, which is Graham Revell. It did score
Always,
The
yes.
Crow and No
The
Escape.
Siege, man. I had that downloaded on my computer while I was studying sometimes, but yeah. Did he do Dark City? Or...
Did he do Dark City? Let me check real quick. I believe.
Yeah.
No, he did not.
Okay.
He did The Negotiator, though.
Yes, that. There you go. Similar 98 movies. There you go. Okay. Yeah.
In Strange Days and From Dusk Till Dawn.
Cool.
Yeah, Graham always impressed me because he kind of had some of. He and Mark Isom were kind of from the same
Mm-hmm.
place, Hans Zimmer. He just started out scoring drive-in movies and then slowly just really kind of got out of his comfort zone and just started just, like you say, just kind of mixing in a little electronic new wave music with some serious classic symphony. It's like, and you, based on the mood of the scene, he would totally change gears.
That's why a lot of his scores were so memorable, especially during that time. Like, especially Hard Target, always mentioned with him.
Yeah. A lot of movies I've forgotten he scored, but it wasn't because they were unforgettable. It was just like you're just so blown away by the movie, and you gotta analyze it a few other times to really pick it through it.
That's true. And they have, speaking of recent composer, that I think is slowly becoming one of my favorites. His name Lorne Balfe. He
Yes.
did 13 Hours, Gemini Man recently, which actually quite like that score. And even
Yeah,
did
he came
Six
from Hans
Underground.
Zimmer's. Yeah.
He's slowly becoming one of my favorites. I even liked how he incorporated Mancino's theme from Bad Boys. But
Okay.
it didn't make it too nostalgic for the new Bad Boys film, and that's what I enjoy about that the most.
Huh. Okay. I definitely remember his score from Gemini Man, recent Mission Impossible, as well as
Yeah.
what was the other one? He did the Tomorrow War and Geostorm, but yeah, he's been doing a lot of video games. He did the Oscar-nominated Florida Project starring William Dafoe. So yeah, there you go. Even
It's
Lego
interesting
Batman.
the crossovers between films and video games now, which
Yeah.
I'm not nearly as up on as I should be.
Well, because after a while, it just kind of got to where it's like, okay, so what, games am I gonna play? And that's just it. I kind of just did some of those simple shoot 'em ups because they were just fun homages to the movies we grew up with. And yeah, like you say, I mean, some of these guys like Graham Revell, I think his next to kin has to be Alexander Desplat, and some of them definitely mirrored each
Yeah.
other. Alan Silvestre and Marco Beltrami, I thought, were kind of just trying to get on the James Horner train.
Right.
Or gold, and
Sylvester's
definitely.
done some good stuff for the Marvel Universe, though. I really enjoyed
Oh yeah,
his
Oh, he did, yeah.
soundtracks there. Didn't he write the little sting that they use at the beginning of all the Marvel movies too? I think that was him.
I would
And
not
that-
be
I think
surprised.
it was him.
Yeah, and it's every time I see that, it kind of uplifts me. It's like that used to be the kind of the thing with the TV
Yeah.
show theme. It would kind of prepare you for the experience of watching the show, whether it was the Rockford Files or Lost in Space or whatever. And I
A theme
think
really
that
does have to stand out. It can't just be, that's a brief tap dance and now, we're going away. And
Right.
I think they learned the hard way when they were just adapting so many different formats. Like they saw a few movies that came out in between 2002 to 07 that kind of were sloppily incorporated in between, like the theme that you hear on the movie company, then the opening theme of the movie itself. And it's like, I think they got better at just, testing the sound in various theaters. Like, yeah, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, a good kind of logo theme can actually set you up for what you're going to see in a movie the same way a TV show theme sets you up for what you're going to see. And I think Marvel's done an exceptional job with that. It's like the old days with the Star Wars franchise when it was at Lucasfilm and 20th Century Fox, and you would get that 20th Century Fox fanfare. Right.
Oh yeah, you always remember that every time.
Love it.
And you'd get that whole setup, and you were ready. And then John Williams hit you with that opening chord, and suddenly you were, in a far ago and long ago and far, far away. And just that's part of what music does. It's supposed to take you to wherever you're going.
Oh, totally.
Oh, definitely.
Shows and video games. And
Absolutely.
it's great that we've got so many people continuing to practice this art and doing it at such a high level. That for every, Elmer Bernstein, who did the Magnificent Seven and Ten Commandments, for every one of those people that we lose, we're gaining a new person that's got a lot of talent and enthusiasm, and that's why I'm probably gonna collect film scores until the day I die.
Oh, they're a must, because, like you say, you want to just kind of have a cool visual while you're driving. Some of the ones who are inspired by, so many people, you can just kind of, you can totally tell. I mean, it's just unmistakable. I really love Don Davis. He kind of disappeared after a while, just kind of scoring some Japanese and Australian films, but I'll never forget how, just, again, seeing the first Matrix, how I was like, yeah, this guy is totally John Williams influence.
Right.
And he even replaced him on Jurassic Park 3, and it's like, I'll say what you want about the movie, but that score's good. I have his rare score.
I actually like 3 better than 2.
Oh, there you go.
I'm not saying the score I necessarily like better 3, but as a film, I enjoyed 3 more than I enjoyed 2.
Oh, hell, I can definitely recommend even his scores for Ballistic, Universal Soldier 2, Turbulence 2. There's a movie.
Even like House on a Hill, I thought was a very underrated score from him.
That was a good score. I own the very rare album for Behind Enemy Lines.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so he even released a soundtrack for Enter the Matrix, so there you go. But he's done a bunch of other TV movies and indie films, and I think he's pretty underappreciated. He was appreciated at the time, but it seems like it's like, yeah, I'd like to see him get a little more fanfare. And the most recent credits I could find for him, it seemed like he was just like doing backup orchestration, like including for some movies like Toy Story 4. So I think he just found out, is like, hey, even if I'm not going to be the main guy composing all the music, I'll still, be part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the way the Zimmer studio, I think, used to work, is that they have a lot of guys like that would...
If I can't do it, my current dude, who I know is the man, I will put in a word for him.
Right. I think that backfired on Zimmer in the the Caribbean, though, because I think he thought that was going to be a crap movie, assigned it to someone else in his studio, so it's like Klaus Bedlet of the Hans Zimmer studio.
I want you.
And suddenly the movie's a big hit, and he's like, oh crap, I should have done those myself. And then he does 3 very mediocre sequels to it.
Well, I totally forgot. One thing I forgot to mention is James Bond theme from John Barry.
John Barry.
Yes, him and David Arnold.
David Arnold, yep.
You can like Thomas Newman. It's not the same without David Arnold and John Barry.
It's not.
And I personally kind of think Thomas Newman's a little overrated, other than Road to Perdition. But yeah, it's like people were just swooning over his Skyfall theme, and I'm like, this feels like a theme for a different movie. This isn't a James Bond score. I need a little more trumpet.
Well, I actually don't mind the GoldenEye score. I know one of the very few that thinks that. But...
Yeah, people complained about Eric Serra. This is GoldenEye score. Is like, I couldn't tell. I still can't tell. I loved his score for Leon the Professional and Nikita, so why wouldn't I love it for that one? People, get your priorities straight.
John Barry's score for Thunderball, I think, was probably the first soundtrack LP that I ever owned as a kid.
Nice.
Very early on, it's like one of the first records I remember
Check out.
buying.
Did you ever have anything on a cassette tape?
Oh yeah, those cassettes were after LPs though.
We were cleaning out our garage about 5 years ago. We still are, but we found a Beverly Hills Cop 2 car
Oh,
seat.
nice.
There. I was like, that's wild.
The trouble with cassettes is that there's so many moving parts.
Yeah,
There's a lot to go wrong with them.
much
And
like a
usually
tape.
the ones you got from the stores, the professional ones, were usually actually worse than the ones if you bought just a good Memorex tape, did it yourself, it would sound better and last longer than one of these ones you'd get through the Columbia House or
RCA records
off the music store, which suddenly you'd be listening and you'd be going and kind of creaking and stuff. So yeah, cassettes and 8-tracks were not.
Even
was a
cars
lot-
stopped carrying stuff like
There's
that.
a lot of stuff that went wrong with those.
Yeah, they were not kind to it, so that's why they can discontinue the formula. It's like, yep, it's got to be on a disc or it's got to be on a record. It's got to be one of those circles. It can't be two circles like a videotape. It just doesn't, for whatever reason, it just wasn't well wound together.
Right, yeah, and we all know how we've all seen videotapes get eaten by machines, and cassette tapes were even
Tracking.
even more flimsy than that. So, and 8-track tapes were also subject to that kind of stuff. Though I always have fond memories of driving across the country to come out to Wisconsin to go to Gen Con and listening to the score of The Lord of the Rings by Leonard Roseman, the Bakshi animated one, which I transferred on, and I still love that score. I transferred that onto an 8-track to stick in my mom's van, my mom's VW van 8-track player, driving across the country to that. So they had some fun stuff, but we were better off with LPs and CDs, or even MP3s. Although MP3s, something goes wrong, they're done, baby.
They're done, baby. No more.
No, I'm a physical media guy still, which is why
I am too.
Full of physical media.
Full of it.
Full of it. I probably only have 200-300 CDs in my studio here, and more upstairs. So.
Oh man.
I'm sure we're forgetting something, but I think that's.
It was inevitable. I definitely recommend any of the scores you hear in any George Romero movie, because he really did have a way of making you be very emotionally involved with what was going on. Anyone else would have just gone with something just randomly melodramatic or gloomy, and I think he really, especially his Caribbean mix on Day of the Dead, I thought was really good.
Cool. Yeah, I don't think I have any Romero soundtracks in my collection. I'll
have to see if they're available. They gotta be out there. They can't just be a Blu-ray special feature.
Oh, I gotta mention Danny Elfman as well.
Oh, how
Danny Elfman,
Danny
yes.
Elfman.
The Spider-Man one gives me
the Frighteners I always mention also.
I didn't know he did
Batman.
that.
Batman.
Yep. Every other
Batman
superhero
was
Tim
so
Burton
good
movie.
that they used it for the animated series too. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his Batman
Made some
really...
moolah. Oh
Yeah,
hell. People
did a lot
trash on the sequel, but I mean, Terminator Salvation score was actually pretty good. Like I got chills listening to that one, and I was like, yeah, that's even more intense than the actual movie. That's how good a score.
Cool, you guys mentioned Randy Newman earlier. He's done some great scores too. The
Yes.
Toy Story ones, the Natural is something I've got above my head here.
My dad could definitely memorize that score to a T.
Brilliant score. There's so many people out there doing such great work, and have been since the advent of sound motion pictures in the 1929 and 30.
They've been collecting them, yeah.
I mean, I haven't even mentioned Salter and Skinner, who did a lot of the classic Wolfman and Bride of Frankenstein and that kind of stuff. There's so many good soundtracks out there.
So many.
You just listen to them and nothing else. And we didn't even talk about, we talked about how good Tarantino's picks are for things like Kill Bill and his soundtracks that are composed entirely with pop.
He kind of goes like
stuff.
Michael Mann, where he chooses which ones are going to be original songs made by like 5 different artists, and then mix it in with like a composer who he just adored.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of good scores out there, a lot of good soundtracks.
Absolutely.
Find your favorite, write to it. I mean, I just did I read a very inexpensive book that had some good tips on writing, but one of the tips that said, okay, when you're done all that, you're ready to sit down and write, find a piece of music that really inspires you and put it on your player, whatever that player happens to be.
Yes.
And that's what I do. That's the way I write every day.
I'll taste it.
Usually those of us that do a lot of writing don't write to things that have words, because the words can kind of get...
It corrupts your writing.
It corrupts your thinking. You start singing along or something, and suddenly you're no longer writing about dinosaurs. Suddenly you're walking down the street in the rain.
What if it's just very loud metal or electronic music?
Whatever works for you, man. You know, I can write to some things that have lyrics, but they have to be things that I'm really, really familiar with. So I'm not going to suddenly be distracted by it. You know, it's like I could put on the Beatles, or I could put on the Beach Boys, or Queen, or, you know, some of the people that I play a lot. But mostly I'm going to be listening to John Williams, or I'm going to be listening to Bernard Herrmann, or I'm going to be listening to one of Max Steiner, or one of these, or Michael Giaccino, one of these really good soundtrack composers.
Hell, even the score, I know I have somewhere on my computer the opening score to Inside the Actors Studio. I bought that off iTunes once. It's like, there are just some scores, it's like, that just puts me in a different place. Put that on.
Hell yeah. You know,
I don't care if anyone makes fun of me.
TV themes, I'll throw on the Green Hornet score if I really want to amp myself up, or Johnny Quest, the original Johnny Quest score, which is like all trombones. Which it's funny, I heard I think Hoyt Curtin wrote that, and I heard that he was really mad at the tuba or the trombone players, so he wrote the Johnny Quest theme, so it was almost literally impossible to play on the trombone. It's like all trombones are the main musical instrument, and they're just constantly having to move that slide back and forth. So it's got kind of this almost a little sloppy sound to it, because he wrote it just to be so difficult to play, because he hated these trombone players.
Totally.
So yeah, TV themes, whatever's good for you, man. There's a lot of great music out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on here. Feel free to promote some stuff. If not, I think we'll call it a night. That's one hell of a list we came up with.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. You go ahead. If you get something to plug, go ahead. And I always have more things to plug than I need.
I don't. You can go ahead. Actually.
All right. You know, if you're in a mood for a Halloween thing, Dr. Cushing's Chamber of Horrors is still out. It's at a new, nicer price, so you'll be able to check that out in time for Halloween. And I hate when, you know, your phone rings and you hit the turn off button and it doesn't work.
Yeah, it happens. People are calling in. I want to buy the book.
Right. Yeah, that'd be good. I also want to plug Monster Shark on a Nude Beach again, which you can go to my site. Buff.
So you do a lot of sci-fi horror tribute kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of Monsters Are Us. That's who I am. You know, adventure guaranteed, monsters included. So you go to my site, sdsullivan.com, and see a lot of what I'm up to.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We might talk about video games, music. Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yeah, yes.
I am the master storyteller of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers, the Google Play, Apple Podcasts,
what else?
Podbean,
what else?
Podcast Addict,
goddamn,
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair to say all that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
popping up
Absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was.
How
be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zemenov. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zemenov, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zemenov, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zemenov.
Hi everybody, it's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything. Pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The two lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VD Clinic Pod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VD Clinic Pod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked